I never imagined my graduation day would feel like stepping into a battlefield instead of sunlight. That morning, I stood in my small apartment, adjusting the crimson robe I had borrowed from the university. The fabric hung heavy, as if it carried every late-night study session, every lonely lab experiment, every moment I told myself I could succeed despite the absence of anyone cheering me on. My name is Lisa Monroe, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible one, the background noise in my own family's story. Mom always had her favorites. Evan was the golden child, praised, celebrated. Given opportunities, I was quietly denied. When he stumbled, it was potential. When I excelled, it was expected. Even as a child, I learned early that no applause awaited me at school performances or science fairs. My parents were never there when I was hospitalized, never called to ask if I was okay. I learned to care for myself, to applaud myself, to quietly rise without anyone noticing. Even now, after years of dedication and sacrifice, the pattern continued. Evan had been given everything: a car at 16, a fully funded out-of-state college, financial support even when he failed to manage it responsibly. Meanwhile, I juggled 2 campus jobs, tutoring, and lab work to pay for groceries, tuition, and necessities. Yet I never complained. I stayed silent, focused, and dreamed quietly. Somehow, through all that silence, I built a life entirely my own, one they could never touch or claim credit for. The honor cord I draped around my neck that morning gleamed gold, a testament to years of awards, late nights, and dedication. For a brief second, I let myself imagine my parents' pride. I pictured Mom smiling, Dad patting my shoulder, Evan teasing that he'd always known I'd make it. And then I walked outside the stadium and reality slammed into me. Mom barely glanced at me. "That rope around your neck really necessary?" She scoffed. "Not trying to show off, are you?" Dad's greeting was no greeting at all. Just a stern, cold reminder: keep things simple. Don't embarrass us. Around us, families hugged, cried, celebrated. And there I stood, the child they had spent 23 years convincing she wasn't worth celebrating. Inside the stadium, lined up with my fellow graduates. The honor cord warm against my chest, I tried to steady my nerves. Other students whispered excitedly about their parents, their support, their seats saved in the front row. Behind me, someone checked if his dad had arrived. Every small joy around me reminded me of what I'd never had. Then Dad's voice cut through my thoughts. "Lisa," he called, beckoning with 2 fingers as if I were a child summoned to misbehave. My heart hammered. He scrutinized me, his eyes cold. "Keep your speech short. No emotion. No bragging." "This isn't about you," I tried to respond. "Dad, it's valedictorian. You don't deserve that degree," he hissed, his words sinking like stones into my chest. Mom rolled her eyes, unimpressed. "Oh, don't make that face. Just get through it," she said. The weight of their indifference and cruelty pressed down harder than the gown I wore. The crowd blurred. My palms were damp, my throat tight. But inside, something flickered. Awareness. All my life, I had excused their behavior, chalked it up to stress or misunderstanding. But now, it was undeniable. They weren't afraid I'd embarrass them. They feared outgrowing them. They feared that I'd become more than their shadow, more than the child who silently carried her own weight. When my name was finally called, applause erupted, but it felt distant, almost irrelevant. I stepped onto the stage, shaking hands with the dean, clutching my speech. And then it happened. A voice that should have been love cut through everything. "You're just a failure in a gown," Mom screamed. Before I could react, Dad lunged forward, grabbing my arm and slapping me across the face. The microphone amplified the crack like a gunshot. Time froze. The crowd held its breath. My cheek burned, but my mind went eerily still. I tasted fear, maybe blood, maybe something colder. Clarity. "Don't embarrass us. Embarrass them," Dad spat. The words were meant to shatter me, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. The security guards rushed in, voices overlapping, trying to restore order, but my attention was only on the sharp awareness that had finally pierced through decades of neglect. I finished my walk across the stage, shaking hands with the dean, feeling the applause, louder than necessary, echoing around me. Not for them, not for Evan, not for the parents who had tried to define my worth, but for me. Each step grounded me in the truth. I had done this entirely on my own. After the ceremony, I didn't seek friends or classmates. I walked straight to the administration building, still in my gown, still carrying the weight of every accomplishment my family had ignored. I requested a full breakdown of every tuition payment, scholarship, and award. When the papers arrived, the truth glared back at me. Not a single dollar had come from them. Every step, every achievement, every late-night struggle had been mine alone. And in that clarity, I felt the first taste of real freedom. Not revenge, not triumph, but the quiet, undeniable knowledge that I no longer needed their validation. I had earned everything myself, and no slap, no scream, no word of dismissal could ever change that. That night, I returned to my apartment. Still in my gown, the honor cord brushing against my arm with every step. Silence greeted me like an old friend. No applause, no judgment, no expectation, just quiet. I spread the tuition breakdown. Scholarships, grants, and awards across the table. Every page confirmed what I already suspected. I had built this life entirely on my own. Every achievement, every late-night lab session, every cent spent on my education had been mine alone. For years, I had carried the invisible weight of their approval. But now the weight lifted. I realized it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. My parents had assumed I would remain small, obedient, grateful for whatever scraps of recognition they chose to give. They were wrong. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out an envelope they had given me the previous year. Just sign these. It'll make things easier when we retire, Dad had said. Back then, I had naively thought it was a sign of trust. Now I understood the truth. It was a control mechanism, a way to tether me to them even as I moved into adulthood. Inside were documents appointing me as a temporary proxy for financial emergencies. They had no idea that I could use this authority not to harm, but to protect what was mine. The next morning, I sat across from a financial advisor in a sleek office downtown. My cheek was still bruised, a silent reminder of the chaos my parents had caused, but I didn't bother covering it. You have legal authority to restructure the fund, he confirmed after reviewing the paperwork. It's unusual, but valid. I nodded, firm and deliberate. I want it protected, I said. Not liquidated for myself. Just moved somewhere they can't misuse it. He studied me, probably expecting anger or bitterness. But I wasn't angry. I was done. Calmly, methodically, I was reclaiming the boundaries they had spent a lifetime trying to erase. By noon, the paperwork was filed. The fund was transferred to a trust with protections they couldn't bypass. I didn't take a single penny for myself. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was simply closing the door they had slammed in my face for years. Hours later, the graduation incident went viral. The video of my father slapping me on stage spread like wildfire. First among students, then local news, and eventually across social media platforms nationwide. Strangers sent messages of support, shared their own stories, asked if I was safe. One email stood out. A tech investor from Seattle wrote, "Anyone who can maintain composure under that pressure has the resilience I need. Interested in joining my lab?" The offer was double what my university had provided. That night, I sat in the dim glow of my laptop, reflecting on the irony. My parents had tried to humiliate me publicly, and instead, they created the moment that opened doors I had never dreamed of. I realized that sometimes the chaos others create for us becomes the catalyst for our true beginning. The next day, I returned to the university alone. The auditorium was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the lights. I walked onto the stage again, but this time there was no fear, no anger, no expectation. I set up my phone, hit record, and addressed the camera. My parents said I didn't deserve my degree, I began, calm and steady. Let's talk about what I actually earned. I outlined every scholarship, every grant, every late-night job, every bill I had paid alone. I explained the proxy documents and the trust I had set up to ensure that their poor decisions couldn't affect my future. "I'm not destroying their future," I said softly. "I'm protecting mine." Then, symbolically, I fed the old paperwork they had given me into the shredder. The sound was slow, deliberate, final. No dramatic yelling, no accusations, just truth. "They have no idea what I will do next," I told the camera, "but I hope they've learned something." The video went viral almost immediately. Within 2 days, it had over 1 million views. My parents didn't reach out at first. On the third day, Dad left a voicemail. "Lisa, Send us the access code to the fund. We can't get in. No apology, no acknowledgement of what they had done. Hours later, Mom texted, "Stop being dramatic. Your father needs that password." I sent them one photo in response, the shredder, filled with their old paperwork. It was not revenge, it was closure. A week later, I boarded a flight to Seattle to begin my new job. I didn't tell them. I didn't owe them that. My workplace was a bright, modern environment, full of people who valued ideas over appearances. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. I was surrounded by colleagues who appreciated my expertise, my vision, and my resilience. But of course, they found me. One afternoon, after a long strategy meeting, I walked into the lobby and froze. My mother stood there, twisting her handbag, and Dad hovered beside her, looking older, somehow deflated. The receptionist gave me an apologetic glance, aware of the viral video. "Lisa, sweetheart, we just want to talk," Mom said, stepping forward. "Now you want to talk," I replied evenly, when there's no stage, no audience, no applause to drown out who I really am. Dad cleared his throat, hesitant. "Your brother told us you exaggerated things online." "Really?" I asked, holding their gaze. "Because the slap wasn't edited, the scream wasn't edited, and neither were your words." They flinched but remained silent. I handed them an envelope containing copies of everything: payment records, scholarship notices, grant approvals, proxy documents, and the legal trust documentation. Mom's hands trembled. "Why are you doing this to us?" I met her eyes calmly. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply stopping what you've been doing to me for years." Dad opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "You taught me something important, even if you didn't mean to. You taught me that some people only love the version of you they can control. Once you outgrow that version, they try to crush you back into it." A long silence stretched between us. "You can leave now," I said gently but firmly. "There's nothing left to discuss." They left without another word, their footsteps fading down the marble hallway. In that quiet, I felt the most profound sense of liberation I had ever known. Freedom wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the deliberate, unshakable decision to protect yourself and move forward. Chicago was colder than I expected, the air sharp and clean, cutting through whatever remnants of the past still clung to me. I had traveled here for a research conference, my first presentation since Seattle, and for the first time in years, I felt completely unburdened. The morning sunlight reflected off the glass skyscrapers, as if signaling that a new chapter had begun, one entirely of my own making. I presented the early detection models I had spent years developing. My hands moved confidently across the slides, my voice steady, my mind entirely focused. When I finished, a dean approached me, her eyes bright with admiration. "I watched your story online," she said. "But your work speaks even louder. Have you considered leading your own program?" For the first time, I felt that same clarity I had on the stage the day my parents tried to humiliate me. But now, it came from creation, not destruction. It came from achievement, not retaliation. I realized that my true power wasn't in shocking my parents or exposing their cruelty. It was in building something they could never take away. I settled into my role leading a small research team, guiding students who reminded me of the versions of myself that had been overlooked and underestimated. For the first time, I woke up without bracing for someone else's disappointment. I woke up to purpose, to vision, to freedom. Then Evan reached out. A short, desperate message. Their parents had blamed him for everything, claiming he had made them look bad. He had nowhere to go and asked if he could stay with me. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent him a single photo, the moment of the slap, frozen midair, framed in a way that reminded me that cycles could be broken, that sometimes rising wasn't loud. Sometimes it was quiet, deliberate, and irreversible. My parents continued their pretenses. They acted as if none of it had ever happened. But I didn't need acknowledgement. I didn't need closure from them. I had already claimed it for myself. Every decision I made from that point on was mine alone. Every achievement, every boundary I set, every step forward reaffirmed that I didn't need their approval to exist, let alone thrive. At work, I cultivated a small but strong community. Students who had once doubted themselves now found guidance and inspiration. I became a mentor not because I wanted to be adored, but because I understood the subtle, quiet struggles of those who had been invisible in their own lives. I knew what it meant to fight silently, to claw your way forward while everyone else remained indifferent. Months passed, and I thrived in ways I had never imagined. Invitations to conferences, research grants, and collaborations poured in. People recognized me not for the chaos that my parents created, but for the competence, resilience, and intelligence I brought to every challenge. I no longer carried the bruises from that day, physical or emotional. I carried lessons, insight, and an unshakable belief in my own worth. One evening, I walked into my office and paused, looking at the framed photograph I had placed on my shelf, the image of the slap, frozen midair. It wasn't a wound and it wasn't a trophy. It was proof. Proof that a person could rise quietly with dignity, even when the world tried to break them. It reminded me that freedom isn't given. It's claimed one boundary at a time. Evan eventually stopped messaging. He waited, I think, hoping for forgiveness or for me to step into the role my parents always assigned to me. Caretaker, fixer, obedient child. But I had moved beyond that. I had learned that being kind did not mean surrendering your own life to someone else's dysfunction. I focused on the people and opportunities that nurtured growth, not drama. My parents never truly acknowledged their actions. Dad never apologized, and Mom never admitted wrongdoing. But I didn't need it. Their silence was irrelevant. I had protected my achievements, preserved my financial independence, and ensured that no one could manipulate the results of my labor. And in that, I found serenity. At the research conference in Chicago, I stood in front of a crowded auditorium again, this time presenting models and insights I had crafted from scratch. When the audience applauded, it was genuine. It was for my work, my ideas, my mind. I realized that day that recognition, when it is truly earned, feels entirely different from the hollow acknowledgement we crave from those who fail to see our worth. My life had transformed quietly but completely. I was no longer the shadow, the helper, the child who vanished into the background. I was Lisa Monroe, a researcher, a mentor, a woman who had faced cruelty and emerged unbroken. My success wasn't measured in viral videos or social media fame. It was measured in the knowledge that I had claimed my future. Step by step, decision by decision. Freedom, I understood, was not loud. It was not a dramatic confrontation or a viral moment. It was the deliberate choice to protect oneself, to walk away from toxicity, to create a life built on personal integrity and resilience. I had mastered that freedom, and with it I moved forward, unafraid of whatever challenges life would place before me. Sometimes when I look back, I still remember the day of my graduation, the sting of the slap, the screech of my mother's words, the silent faces around me, but I no longer feel broken. I feel anchored. That day they tried to define me. I refused. And in that refusal, I discovered something greater than any degree. Any applause or any recognition, I discovered myself. And that finally was enough.